Buying a mature home can cost you a lot more than just money. It can cost you your health if you don't know about the building materials that were used. Before you think about buying a mature home, there are a lot of costly items that may and will need to get replaced. But if you don't know about them, it could ruin your financials or maybe even your health. Let's start with something that most people don't talk about, and it could cost you. Your main service. These are your main electrical, sewer, water, and gas lines. There were a lot of different materials that were used and tested over the past century in Calgary. We've seen original cast iron pipes that transition to ABS pipe and then transition again into clay pipe. A lot of these materials like clay sewer pipes are durable and can last 50 or 60 years, but they will eventually break, and the majority of these pipes are past their life expectancy. In the 1980s, the city of Calgary stopped using clay sewer pipelines and moved into PVC pipes because they have a longer life and less likely to have breaks. These are the different types of materials that were used over the years. This means if you're looking at a home built before the 1980s, your sewer line might be past its life expectancy. Everything has a life expectancy, so this is normal, but how do you know where it's at in its life cycle? I would always recommend a sewer scope when purchasing a home, especially a mature home. You're responsible for any damage that occurs on your property. Sometimes the sewer line isn't installed properly, other times it's roots, ground shifts, and just regular wear and tear. A sewer scope is when a professional company or inspector comes out and sticks a camera down your sewer line to inspect the integrity, condition, and material. Like in my previous example, just because you see a cast iron pipe in your basement, it doesn't mean that the entire line is made of the same material. The average cost for a sewer line replacement that we've seen is $10,000 or more. This entails hydrovacing the old line out while laying a new one in and connecting it to the city's main line. Sometimes the lines run under walking paths or garage slabs and other objects that could impact the price of the work. Sleeving a sewer pipe, sometimes called lining the pipe or cured in place lining, is a trenchless method used to repair existing pipelines. This technique involves inserting a flexible, resin-saturated liner into the old pipe. Once it's in place, the liner is inflated and the resin's cured, typically using heat or UV light. The major benefits of sleeving a sewer pipe are the minimal disruptions to the surrounding area because it eliminates the need for excavation. It's also faster and more cost-effective compared to the traditional methods. This method is super useful for repairing pipes that are difficult to access, like when they're under buildings or in busy areas. All right, quick pause on this video. Listen, before I say anything, this isn't coming from me, this is coming from the entire team. We need more subs. A lot of our viewers are still not subscribed, so please like, share, and comment below on the type of content that you'd like to see next. Now let's talk electricity. Many older homes in Calgary, especially those built in the 60s and 70s, were wired with aluminum. It was cheaper than copper and seemed like a good idea at the time. But there's a catch. Aluminum expands and contracts more than copper. It's called cold flow, and it leads to loose connections that create arcing and sparking, which makes it a fire hazard. Pigtailing aluminum wiring is super basic and the most common practice to prevent fire hazards. Essentially, you splice or connect a short length of copper wire to aluminum wire and then connect the copper wire to the electrical device approved for the copper connection. You need to use proper connectors that are approved for copper to aluminum connections and antioxidant compounds. The antioxidant compound is used to avoid the risk of aluminum becoming corroded. Nearly 500,000 homes in Canada are estimated to have aluminum wiring. If you're unsure whether your home has aluminum wiring, you can check for certain markings on the cable where you have cables exposed, or you can look inside your panel. Be aware and look into your home's electrical, especially if your home was built in those years. Here are a few other telltale signs that you may have aluminum wiring. If you feel warm face plates on receptacles or switches, odd smells near switches or receptacles, flickering of lights, or unusual TV or radio static interference. If you're noticing any of these items in your home, call an electrician and have them look deeper. Another one on the electrical side is the size of the main service. Whether you're planning to suite your home or have plans to add high-load devices like an electric vehicle, hot tub, or AC, you need to do a load calculation and make sure that you have enough capacity. Before the 1960s, 60 amp services were common, especially in Calgary. Insurance companies will require you to upgrade your main service, which can cost anywhere from a few $1,000s to well over $7,000, depending on the size of the new service and the distance that it has to go. I personally owned a rental property that we intended to tear down and redevelop. It had a 60 amp service and the receptacles weren't even grounded. So the plugs looked like this. Electrical is one that you need to be careful with because it's not just the cost, it's also the safety side of things.
Let me measure it for you.
60 amp panels aren't dangerous, but given the load appliances and newer equipment requires, you might be super limited to what you can have and use in your home. It's pretty easy to tell what size of service you have. You can either check on the main breaker at the panel, or check the meter outside, or even call the city or municipality that you're in. We shouldn't be drinking from lead pipes, but we still have some. That would explain that rash that hasn't gone away in 18 years. In 2020, Calgary set out to replace 700 lead lines that we had on public and privately held land. But just keep in mind, the city only replaces these lines to the property line. So just because your entire street was replaced, it doesn't mean that you don't have it coming into your home. Lead service lines were used in Calgary only between 1939 and 1947, when copper was not readily available during World War II. According to the city of Calgary, roughly 5,000 buildings were built in the time period, and elevated lead levels are typically related to homes built before 1950. The National Plumbing Code of Canada allowed for the use of lead in home pipes until 1975 and lead solder until 1986. I love using this tool provided by the city of Calgary. It's an interactive map that shows every home in Calgary, and you can search by the address or even the material type. As you can see, a lot of residents still have water lead pipes heading into their home. So what's the risk with lead water lines? The greatest risk of lead exposure is to infants, young children, and pregnant women. Scientists have linked the effects of lead on the brain with lowered IQ in children. Adults with kidney problems and high blood pressure can also be affected by low levels of lead too. So do your research and check what kind of piping you have going into your mature home. The other water line coming into your home that you should know about is Kitech. Kitech plumbing was used in homes and condos in Canada, including Calgary, between 1995 and 2007. It was popular for in-floor heating and regular residential use. You can tell that you have a Kitech main water line by the bright orange or blue casings, with orange being the more common in Calgary, and it will also typically say the brand of the pipe. The drawbacks of Kitech are the heat tolerance issues, with Kitech pipes only certified to operate at a maximum temperature of about 82 degrees Celsius. But hot water tanks often run hotter than this limit, and they're also prone to failure with high water pressures. Because of the deterioration under high temperatures or excessive water pressures, Kitech pipes can burst, leading to significant flooding and expensive water damage. Now we move on to the most dangerous of all the construction items that we've discussed today: asbestos. Asbestos was used in a lot of construction materials in Calgary and beyond, particularly in structures built from the early 1900s through 1990. Even though the manufacturing of asbestos products was banned in Canada in 1979, the sale of remaining stock continued, leading to the spike in asbestos use from the late 1970s to the mid 1980s. Before 1990, asbestos was mainly utilized for insulating buildings and homes against cold weather and noise, and for fireproofing purposes. It was also used in some auto parts and making products strong, long-lasting, and fire-resistant. Identifying asbestos in your home can be challenging, especially in renovated homes. Materials that have asbestos might be hidden under layers of new materials. For instance, 9x9 vinyl floor tiles usually contain asbestos and could be hidden under wood subfloors or newer flooring tiles. There were more than 3,000 different materials produced before 1985 that contained asbestos. Another common one that we've run into, even personally, countless times is vermiculite. Vermiculite insulation was very popular in Calgary and other parts of Canada and US from the early 1900s. A significant number of attics in Calgary homes were upgraded with vermiculite insulation. Vermiculite was a popular choice through the energy crisis until about the mid-1980s in Canada, and it was among the insulating materials allowed under the Canadian Home Insulation Program. Asbestos fibers are extremely dangerous when inhaled, and it poses risks such as lung cancer. Just remember, if asbestos-containing materials are left alone and undisturbed, there's typically not a significant concern. If you think that your home has asbestos, especially if it was built or renovated before the 1990s, I advise you to consult a specialist for proper identification and handling. Asbestos can be a health hazard if disturbed, so any removal should be done by professionals. There's nothing wrong with purchasing a mature home. I love mature homes and established neighborhoods. You need to be aware of the dangers and costs associated with owning an older home, but if you're educated and have allocated the money, why not buy one?